the human behavior is going to shift from the inside out. So it doesn't mean that we're suddenly all going to be loving and kind and stuff, but it does mean that there's an awakening that's taking place deep inside human beings, humanity itself, and that it's beginning to pop up in the first flowers of spring. So more and more people are beginning to experience little glimmers of it.
Here, you and I are just getting to know each other, but I'm just going to come out right here and be very real with you. I'm not familiar with the gene keys. I only became familiar with them in preparing for this conversation. So I have a very beginner's mind about it. I have talked to lots of people about awakening and how through that there's a vision of our collective awakening. And I also hear a voice inside of me that says, look, Tammy, individuals have had these kinds of breakthroughs throughout history. Turning that into something that's going to be the new future human for the species. Come on, stop it. Look around. And to be honest with you, and this is where getting to know each other, I have both of these voices inside of me. And so, once you go inside my world, there's a lot going on. And so there's a part of me deep in my heart that believes in this evolutionary possibility for the human species. I sense it. I know it even. And yet I have a disbelieving voice as well that says, in what millennium might this occur? And perhaps it won't. So how do you weigh in here as we're talking about this?
Yeah, well, I have to say I'm absolutely with you 100%. Because when you look outside in the world and you see our behavior, and you don't have you can't quite conceive that anything like that could be possible for the species, right? But then what I would do is look at the allegory of the dragonfly, right? When you're down under the water in that watery realm, you can't even imagine how that creature could transform from being this, horizontal plane thing to this multidimensional vertical other thing. But if you think about the evolution, if you think even about the timescales involved, 3 years underwater, 3 hours going up a stalk, and then, minutes before it, as it takes to the air. That's how quick transformation can occur and does occur, because that's the evidence right there. That's how quick it is, and so we never know when a quantum leap is coming. And I'm not one of these kind of hopefuls. I am a realist, and I'm a father, and I'm a very ordinary, grounded man, despite anything you've just heard. And I'm just a family man, really. And I kind of, so I look at the world as it is and I see it, but I also have watched these patterns for years now, and I also am armed with this technology called the gene keys, which is incredible, and it really accurately depicts algorithms and timings and living algorithms that live inside us as humans, but also kind of dictate the flow of our kind of trajectory. And so one of the things that I kind of see is, and I've learned a lot, one of the things I've learned from systems theory, for example, is that when a system is getting ready to go through a major transition, there are signs before that happens, right? And those signs, the physicists and people, they call them strange attractors, right? There's a thing called strange attractors, and strange attractors are unforeseen events that are not linear in any way. They come in suddenly from the side and they take everyone by surprise, and they kind of reroute the direction of things. And when a system's about to change, you get more of these. You can't say what they're going to be or what they're going to do, but what they do know is that more of them appear. So you could say that the pandemic was one of those. You might even say Donald Trump is one of those, a strange attractor, right? Anything that comes in that you were not expecting, and that stirs things up. And I'm not saying they're good or bad. There's no value added to it. It's just we're going to see more of them, and they create more disturbance and more ripples, and they are evidence of a declining paradigm, right? And that it's in that backdrop that you kind of see early shoots of spring appearing, right? So I'm kind of realistic. And many people kind of wish that it would be very soon, and they ask when's this going to happen, and I just say, well, it's going to take hundreds of years, but hundreds of years is not long, and it's here now. It's actually here, like the mycelium under the ground. So we are perhaps in the process of going up the stalk, our species. And so we don't really, and when you go up the stalk into the light, you don't really know what you're doing or why you're doing it. And it's terrifying because you're leaving what you've known, and the known starts to decline and fall away. And the old paradigm, everywhere you look, you see it declining. You see the social fabric declining. You see the, reality itself just sort of falling away. And so fear increases hugely. And I've sort of, that's what I've continuously sort of been monitoring. So I think if you're very tuned in, then you can start to see the very first buds of this new consciousness. But it's very subtle, and it's quite inward, inside us. Just as the first little buds pushing up through the dark of winter, there's always a few early ones, but that spring's still quite a long way away, but that the power of spring is under there. And so that's how I frame this phase that we're in now. And so what it does is it brings a huge amount of hope. But it's not sort of hope like false hope. For me, it's certainty. But I do my best to convey that certainty. For me, it's a cellular certainty because I felt it and I know it. Knowing is a thing, right? Memory, you can't argue with memory. Like when you remember something, it's something that takes place in the cells of your body. So I remembered it. And once you've remembered it, you can't unremember it. It's like, and so I know it's coming. I don't know when, but I sense its arrival. And I have the algorithm system, which I was also given, not me alone, many others have used it. And it's used by other people, and it's a similar system to human design in some respects, where people are it's another tool, personal tool, gene keys. But it allows you to look at patterns, and then extrapolate from those patterns and get a sense of when things are coming. And so gene keys, and if anyone comes in new to the gene keys like you, like one of the first things that you might come into touch with is there's a sort of prophecy woven into it. So even though it's a sort of technology of consciousness, right in the heart of it is this prophecy that kind of is around this time, and particularly 2026 and 2027 as it happens. I mean, I've 30 years since I had my experience, and so I've sort of been waiting for this time, not waiting kind of, excitedly. It's here now. And I'm not saying that everything's going to suddenly change, but I do think these next few years we will experience a ramping up of fear, because we're in the time of strange attractors, and that means that there are more chaotic forces around, and I think people are feeling it, and I want to give the perspective that there's something else going on under the fear, under the surface, and it's something quite beautiful and remarkable. And not that we should set hope in it and just go, oh, well, it's all going to be fine then. Not at all. But it does change things when you take that view. Does that make sense?
What you're saying makes sense. I want to make sure that it's clear to me and to our listeners, which is you use the word certainty Certainty of what? Like, I get the allegory of the dragonfly, but I'm also like trying to put myself now into the dragonfly's consciousness. It's flying. What does that mean with certainty for me as a human?
It's the cellular certainty that, there is something hidden inside every human being, a higher species, a higher being, and it's actually a genetic thing. It requires a series, just as the dragonfly. The dragonfly has to go through a series of genetic mutations, molts they're called, and most of them are invisible. They take place under the water, and you don't see it. There's no sign, there's no outer signs of it, but it goes through this process inside, and then it culminates in a huge, transmutation where its behavior shifts. And so what we're seeing, what's certain, is that the human behavior is going to shift from the inside out. So it doesn't mean that we're suddenly all going to be loving and kind and stuff, but it does mean that there's an awakening that's taking place deep inside human beings, humanity itself, and that it's beginning to pop up in the first flowers of spring. So more and more people are beginning to experience little glimmers of it as it begins to pop up and open. So that's what I mean by the certainty. The certainty is that awakening is baked into every human being alive. It's because it's the truth of who we are. And as you said, the great mystics through time and space have known it, and many of us have glimpsed it in kind of moments, or if we took plant medicine or whatever we did, or we went to deep meditation, or maybe it just happened as a freak event like mine, and you just came into touch with it for a moment. So it's there, and its time is coming, like a wave, and the outer things that we're seeing are part of it coming.
Discover on-demand videos and docuseries, explore a full schedule of daily life classes, and become part of an incredible community. At Sounds True One, we invite you inward to find your way, your way.